Quiz 2, if you want a pretty good indication of what you're going to see on the written section of your test, and the written section of your test will be about 75% of your test, look at Quiz 1 and Quiz 2. Quiz 0, where we just drew the vectors, I'm not going to give you a question like that. You'll just need to know how to draw vectors in order to do stuff, okay? Got to have my favorite student, Ann Sirkey. Give all answers to 2 or 3 sig figs. Question 0. All vectors have both magnitude and direction. 1 mark. Number 1. That's the key word right there, horizontally. I'm going to dulp, and I think I'm going to dulp right here. So the cannonball is launched horizontally. It's told me the cliff is 25 meters high. And there's an initial velocity of 80 meters per second. This is a projectile. I'm going to do a t-table. I'm going to have a horizontal. I'm going to have a vertical column. I'm going to have AX equals 0. I'm going to have AY equals negative 9.8. VX is definitely 80. What's VY initial when we launch horizontally from a cliff? That's what makes these, although they look tougher, the easiest of the 3 main types of projectile questions. Oh, and then they also gave me a vertical displacement, which is going to be not positive 25, negative 25. A says, how long is the cannonball in the air? A wants me to find time. I'm going to find time vertically. I'm looking for an equation that has a T, an A, a VI, and a D in it. There is one. I didn't bother writing the VIT because VI here is what, Owen? And then, Matt, how am I going to get the T by itself? How will I move the A over? How will I move this 2 over? Now, the other thing you could have done is instead of putting a 2 on the bottom for the 1/2, you could have put a 0.5 in front of the A, in which case you would divide by 0.5. Here I put a 2, and it's on the bottom, so how will I move it to the other side? And you're going to get this, 2 times D over A equals T squared. By the way, you knew this was coming. How do I get rid of a squared? Square root it. So T is going to be the square root of 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8. T is going to be, I have no idea. Well, 50 divided by 10, root 5, 2 point something, I can tell you that. 2.2586. I'm going to write 2.26, but I'm going to store this on my calculator, thinking I might use it later. So 2.26. I would take 2.3, but let's get in the habit of giving our final answers whenever they want one to 3 sig figs. Okay, so I'm going to go 2.26 seconds. If you did not put seconds next to your answer, I would take a half mark off. If you got this right, that would get you 2 out of 2. Otherwise, I would give you a half mark if I saw that. I would give you 1 whole mark. Sorry, I would give you a half mark if I saw that you had gone T equals the square root of 2 times D over A. I would give you a half mark for the numbers and a half mark for the answers. Those are really messy 5s. I don't know what it is. As a left-handed person, drawing a 5 is a really tough number for me to write. Go figure. B, how far does it travel horizontally? Hey, that wants me to find a dx, and I think there I'm just going to go vx times t. Technically plus a half at squared, but a is 0. So it's going to be 80 times 2.26. But Maggie, you know, instead of writing 2.26, I'm going to use my answer button. 80 times answer button. We have 181. Is that right? Again, 2 out of 2 if you got that. Otherwise, I would probably give you 1 whole mark for that, half mark for that, half mark for the answer. Those of you that have not had me before, this is important, just so that you know how I mark. If you got time wrong, but you dropped time right to there and you went 80 times your wrong value, I would give you 2 out of 2 for part B. I will give you full marks for a part 2 if you started with the wrong value, but you did it all correctly. I'll get my calculator out and I'll walk through it as well. Or if there's a part B and you know that you need part A to do part B, but you can't remember how to find part A, make up a nice value. Oh, I know, Mr. Dueck, I need to find acceleration. I can't remember how to do that. Let's assume the acceleration is 3.6. I'll show you how I can do the rest. I'll give you full marks for the rest of the question. I will. I'll just take marks off for the section that I've allotted for you to find part A. Okay? Projectile is launched at an angle. Did I say angle above the horizontal? Okay. Dulp. It's going to be 28. You know what? 58 degrees is steeper than 48, so I'm going to draw a little steeper than that. 28 meters per second. And we're going to have Vx and Vy. I seem to, and theta was 58 degrees. Color. I seem to recall that Vy was sine 28 sine 58, 23.7453. 23.7453. What did I say again? 23.7453. I'll give a final answer to 3 sig figs, but if you didn't do that, I'm not going to freak out. Where I will freak out is if you didn't put meters per second. I'll take a half mark off. Vx is going to be 28 cos 58. $14.8377 or 14.8, and again, meters per second. So 1 mark for each of those, half mark off if you didn't put units. B, what's the maximum height? Okay, I'm going to do my t-table, I think, over here now. Horizontal, vertical, AX is 0, AY is negative 9.8, VX was 14.8377, VY initial was 23.7453. Oh, I know. For part B, I also know that VY final is 0. So I can find D. I'm going to use VF squared equals VI squared plus 2AD. We haven't used that one much lately, but it's important. So that means that D is going to be VF squared minus VI squared all over 2A. It's going to be 0 squared minus 23.7453 squared all over 2 times negative 9.8. I might even, just so I start with a non-rounded off value, go back and put that sine value onto my calculator. You don't have to, because 6 sig figs will carry you all the way through, but I'm a bit of a nerd that way. And then I can go 0 squared minus answer button squared, close bracket, divided by 2 times negative 9.8. Did you all get an answer of 28.8? I would probably also accept 28.7, depending on how you round it off.
Yeah, I did another method.
If you did it a different way, come lawyer with me afterwards. Did you get the same answer?
Yeah.
2 out of 2. You found time?
Yes.
Oh, so you did extra work.
Yeah, I did time.
Oh, pathetic. You did extra work. I got there in 1 step, just saying. 28.8 meters. If you got that wrong, I would probably give you a half mark if I saw that equation, a half mark for that, a half mark for the numbers, and a half mark for the answer. Or if you found time, I would give you 1 mark if you found time correctly, and then 1 mark for the answer. But as long as you get the same, yeah, we're at the stage now, by the way, there's usually 2 or 3 ways to get there. I can think of at least 1 other way. I can also find it. Find the total time, divide by 2, and then plug that in. D equals VIT plus a half A. There's other ways. C, how long is the projectile in the air for? I think I'm just going to take my time that, I don't know time. then I'm going to get there in one step. Now, if you found time by finding time to top and then doubling it, you'll get the same answer as me, and I'll give you full credit. But Maggie, I'm lazy. Why would I find something if I could just get there in one step? I'm going to say this. T equals Vy final minus Vy initial over A. And I know that Vy final is negative 23.7453 minus 23.7453 all over negative 9.8. I can't use that trick off of a cliff, because when I'm going off of a cliff, I'm definitely hitting my final y value. My vertical velocity is going to be way bigger than my initial because it's had a chance to fall further than it went up, right? Meanwhile, negative 23.7453 minus 23.7453, or I could have brought in the trig functions for that matter, divided by negative 9.8. Y'all get 4.85 or 4.84 seconds? Mm-hmm. Yes? For me, it's 4.85, but I'd take 4.84 because it's right on the tipping point of rounding off. It might be different if you use the trig functions. I don't know. Okay. Next page. Two forces act upon a point Q. Force F1 is 5 newtons due east. I see a compass rose in my future. My pen has just started acting up. It's writing even when I'm close to the screen. So you're going to see those little thin lines. Sorry. Force 1 is, we want the resultant force R. So we're going to label them, we're going to add them together. So it's going to look like this. 5 east plus 12 south. My scale is terrible. I can be a little better than that, Mr. Dueck. Plus 12 south. How do I add two vectors together? I draw them tip to tail. So 5, 12. Hey, has it magically fixed itself? No, it hasn't. 13 is the hypotenuse, yes? I used the 5, 12, 13 Pythagoras triangle because I didn't want to have a yucky answer. Nope, wrong button, Mr. Dueck. So this ends up being 13 when you do the Pythagoras. You're going to get 13 newtons at color. Tan theta equals 12 over 5. $67.4 degrees, 67 degrees, is that right? 67.4 degrees. North of south, east of west, what of what? This would be south of east. I would give you 1 mark for the magnitude, half mark for the theta, and a half mark for the direction. Oh, this is a messy quiz. Now, I would also then take 90 minus that. Oh, I totally typed that wrong. 90 minus that. I would take 22.6 degrees east of south. Sometimes pulling out the battery does the trick. Let's find out. See if that magically fixed it. Plane travels due east. You know what? I've scrolled down. Again, I'm doing a compass rose. Hey, that fixed it. You can stay away from your phone. It's not that important. We want the ground speed. So what we're using here is the idea that the engine speed or velocity plus the wind speed, technically a velocity, equals the ground speed. They call it ground speed. It's a vector. They should call it ground velocity. It drives me crazy, but I'm using the industry vernacular, so okay. It does say magnitude and direction. East, 220, plus 80 meters per second, 30 degrees north of east. North of what? East. North of what? East. North of what? east. This is 80. Right there is 30 degrees. Now, there's two ways to do this. You could actually add these tip to tail. It would use the cosine law and the sine law, and this angle here would be 150 degrees because the one right next to it is 30 degrees, and they make a straight line. And I have no problem if you do that. In fact, Ben, that's how I would do it, because I can do the sine law and the cosine law just as good as I can do SOHCAHTOA. To me, it's no problem. But I recognize some of you aren't quite as comfortable as that. Probably most of you said there's an angle components, and you probably broke this up into a horizontal and a vertical component. The horizontal component in this case ends up being cosine quite wonderfully. It won't always be cosine. It will work for projectiles, but the reason I knew it was cosine because I gave you the same angle that I always give you in projectiles this time. I don't have to. So it's going to be 80 cos 30, which is 69.282. The vertical one ends up being 80 sine 30, which works out bang on to 40, I believe, yes? Mm-hmm. So what we're really adding is this. 220 plus 69.282 plus 40. How do we add three vectors together? Well, we do them two at a time. The same way when you're adding three numbers together, you do them two at a time. But we always said, try and pick a nice, convenient order. I think I'd add the first two because they're in the same plane, the same direction. And that would give me 289.282 plus 40. My scale right now is terrible, but that's the ground velocity. And now I'm in familiar territory. V is going to be Pythagoras plus 220. There's the 289, blah, 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 squared plus 40 squared equals square root. You get 292 as the magnitude? Mm-hmm. See, nodding, yes? At. Oh, theta is going to go right here. Color, 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 color. Opposite, adjacent. Tan theta equals 40 over 289.282. Should be a pretty small angle. 40 over 289.282. You get 7.9 degrees. North of south, east of west, what of what?
North of south. Yeah, north of east.
North of east. 1 mark for the magnitude, half mark for the theta, half mark for the what of what, and of course, you could also have gone 82.1 degrees east of north. Now I'm going to give you a blatant hint about your test. I'm either going to ask you a river question or an airplane question, but I will not ask you a non-right angle triangle. On your test, I'm going to have it be a right angle. It just takes too long. This is where I assessed, can you handle a non-right angle triangle by breaking things into components? And if you handle this good, I'm not going to do that on the test. However, there is a very, very good chance. I've got 3 or 4 different versions of the test floating around that I've made. I don't remember which one I photocopied for you. But please be aware, I might ask you to find this one or this one instead of V ground. How would you get, for example, the engine velocity by itself? Do you say minus? I would have to subtract vectors. Oh, how do I subtract vectors? I don't. I add the opposite. I would have no problem giving you a subtraction question. Okay? I know I've done that on at least one of my exams out there. 2 more. Ugh. Cliff at an angle. Oh, they gave me the vertical displacement. This is going to be full quadratic formula. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. If you use the quadratic formula, fine, but I have promised you that I would show you a workaround. On this one here, I'll show you the hack workaround. You can actually do these without the quadratic formula. It just means you're going to have to find something else first. So I'll show you that if you want to use that method because you're shaky on the quadratic formula, you can. First of all, t-table. Vx is going to be 20 cos 30. Vy initial is going to be 20 sine 30. This one works out even to 10. This one is going to work out to 17 point something, something, something. 17.32 if I do the math in my head, I think. 17.3205. I'll carry some extra sig figs. What do they want me to find? They want me to find the range. Not really. Technically, that's what they want me to find. But Maggie, what am I going to spend most of my time finding? Time. Because I only have 2 things in each column. No. I have 3 things. They did give me the height. So I have to turn it into a displacement and make it negative. Okay? So one option would be to go d equals VIT plus a half AT squared. Negative 36 equals 10t minus 4.9 t squared and blah, 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 blah. Or, how many things do I know in the vertical column? I can also find Vy final. Here is the method if you don't like using the quadratic formula. You can choose to find Vy final. I'm looking for an equation that has an A, a Vi, a D, and a Vf. There is one. It's the squared squared. Vf squared equals Vi squared plus 2AD. I'm going to get Vy final squared equals 10 squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 36. Matt, how do I get rid of a squared? So if I go to my calculator and I go 10 squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 36. By the way, those of you that are paying close attention, what I've just typed here is from the quadratic formula, b squared minus 4ac. I'm doing the quadratic formula in a roundabout way without actually calling it the quadratic formula. But you're going to see, oh, some of the same numbers show up in some of the same locations. Oh, I forgot the negative, Mr. Dueck. That was silly of me. Square root. Why can't that be Vy final? Why is it impossible for Vy final to be 28.3830? My calculator assumes I want the positive square root. What's the square root of 9? It's not 3. It's plus or minus 3, technically, because negative 3 squared is also 9. Your calculator, Owen, will always assume you want the positive square root. In this case, I know better than my calculator. I know when I hit the ground, which direction am I traveling? I'm looking for where it begins letter D. So I know I want the negative answer. Harry, you can't have a hoodie on. Sorry, we have a rule about that. So I'm going to say that Vy final, the tricky part with this, I have to remember, Rowan, to add the negative myself. And that's a common thing that kids forget, which is why I don't necessarily emphasize this method. But it's going to be negative 28.383 meters per second. And now I can find time. It's going to be V final minus V initial over A, vertical, vertical, vertical. It's going to be negative 28.383, I'm going to use my answer button, minus 10 all over negative 9.8. Those of you that used your quadratic solver, did you get a time value of negative answer button? minus 10 divided by negative 9.8. This will give me exactly the same answer as on the quadratic solver because I didn't do any rounding off. I got 3.9166422, which I think is what you got, yes?
Yes.
No quadratic formula required. I'll be honest, if I have a crappy calculator that doesn't have a built-in solver, I'll do it this way because I can track everything in my head. I'm good enough, Nick, that I don't have to write anything down. I can find time without writing anything down. If I'm doing a quick answer key and I don't have my fancy graphing calculator that has the built-in solver, I would find VY final, make it negative, find time. Because I can do that all up here. If you give me a solver, for Pete's sake, I'm using a solver and getting there in one step because, that's how I roll. 3.9166422. 3.91664, good enough. And now, finally, it's going to be 17.32 blah, 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 times 3.91 blah, 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 blah. You know what? I'm going to go like this. I'm going to go, just to give you an exact value, 20 cos 30 times answer button. No? You should have got 67.8. I'd probably take 67.7. I might take 67.9 as well. 68 meters if you go to 2 sig figs, but I usually go to 3. Is that right? People nodding? Okay. 67.8 meters. If you got that right, I would give you 7 out of 7. If you got that wrong, here's what I would start doing. I would give you, believe it or not, a half mark for writing AX equals 0 and a half mark for writing AY equals negative 9.8 because although I've jokingly called those physics no-brainers, you have to know physics before you know that they're no-brainer. I'll reward you for that. You know something. I would give you a half mark for finding VX successfully, a half mark for finding VY successfully. You would now be at 2 out of 7. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that, or if you use this method, I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. Now you're at 3 out of 7. I would give you 1 mark for finding VY final if you use that method, or I would give you 1 mark. Actually, I'd probably end up giving you 2 marks. Oh, no, you know what? I would give you 1 mark if I saw the quadratic formula here. So right now, that would give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because you get 1 mark for finding time. So right now you're at 5 out of 7. Then I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. That's 6 out of 7, and 1 mark for the answer. And my point that I want you all to realize in Physics 12, please don't leave questions blank. You're killing me if you do that because I can't give you what I think of as the reward mark. You should get some basic marks for recognizing this is a projectile and that there are certain things that I can do. Is that okay? 6 was way easier. How do I know? Oh, because they gave me a horizontal distance, which means A is 0, so no quadratic formula required. Still going to be a t-table. Horizontal, vertical, AX equals 0, AY equals negative 9.8, VY initial. I used the same diagram, so it's 10. VX, I use the same diagram, so it's 17.3205. Yeah. Sine VY, cos, of course it is. And then here they gave me DX is 154. Now, on the test, I would feel comfortable not putting the dx in the question and just using the word range and expecting you to realize, oh, range is the word in English for the horizontal distance. I would have no problem with that. Find time. dx equals vxt. T equals dx over vx. It's going to be 154 divided by 17.3205. 154 divided by 17.3205. Or I could put in the trig function and get an exact value. Did you get a time of 8.8912-ish? No? Yes? Some of you nodding? That's not my answer. They want the height of the cliff. Okay, I'm going to find dy, which is going to be vy initial t plus a half AYT squared. It's going to be 10 times 8.8912 plus 0.5 times negative 9.8 times 8.8912 squared. Of course, I'm going to use my answer button. This is going to give me a displacement, not a height. It's going to give me a negative answer. I'm not going to freak out when I get that. I'm going to say, oh yeah, I did end up below from where I started from. 10 times answer button plus 0.5 times negative 9.8 times answer button squared. You get negative 298? It's a high cliff. If you said that, I'll give you full marks. I'm going to make it positive in my final answer because it did say height. If you're missing units, meters on your final answer, or on the previous question, meters, if you're missing units on your final answer, I always take off a half mark. If you got this right, I would give you 7 out of 7. Otherwise, again, similar to before, I would give you a half mark for that. I would give you a half mark for that. I would give you a half mark for that. I would give you a half mark for that. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. You're already at 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what? I would probably give you 1 mark for time. You're at 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 7. You've already passed the question. Then I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. I would give you 1 mark for the answer. You know what? I'm missing a mark. I would probably then go back and give you 1 mark for that. And there's 7 out of 7. But if you get the right answer, I give you, and show some work. If you only write down an answer, I kind of probably assume you might have copied off somebody, so don't do that. But as long as you show me intelligent work and you get the correct answer, you get full marks. But this is why, Nick, I always say to you on a test, I don't take shortcuts, because in case I make a dumb mistake, I want to be able to get all the part marks. So for example, let's suppose that when you type this into your calculator, you accidentally, instead of hitting 30 degrees, you hit 20 degrees and didn't notice. So you had the wrong VX. You would still get 6.5 out of 7. I would walk all the way through on my calculator the rest of your work and make sure that you had done it correctly. But only if you showed the steps. Okay? Can you give yourself a lovely score out of 31? And if you need to lawyer with me, now is the time.